A little bit of my story. I don't know if you guys know, I was a missionary kid. I grew up in Bangladesh. And so my parents were missionaries out there. And basically Bangladesh, if you took half of America's population and stuffed it in about the size of Ohio or Michigan, that's how crowded Bangladesh is. And it's mostly Islamic, mostly Muslims there. I came back to America and decided just a couple years ago that I want to be a missionary to Thailand, which is about 95% Buddhist. And so my topic is, there's so many religions out there. How do we know Christianity is the only truth? And why does it matter? And that's kind of wordy, so I'm going to kind of break that down for us. But I just kind of want to give you guys a picture of, this isn't something, just a topic that I've kind of took the last couple weeks preparing, but really this is something that is important to me and has been to my family and for my future. This is the question for me. I'm moving to a country where nobody knows about Jesus, nobody knows about the gospel, so why is what I'm bringing more important than what they already have? This is a map of basically most of the major world religions. And basically what I wanted you guys to get a picture of from here is just a starting point for why does it matter? Why does it matter that we're even talking about this topic? Well, just a short list that I came up with of some of the different religions in this world. We believe in Christianity, or a lot of us do. There's Islam, Buddhism, Hinduism, Judaism, Shintoism. There's Sikhs, there's Mormons, there's animists, Confucianists, there's Jainism, Taoism, Zoroastrianism. I just want to ask you guys, can more than one religion be true? To me, usually when you ask when you ask a group of Christians, it's no, they can't. There can only be one true religion, and that's kind of that's kind of what Christians believe. We believe that we have the truth and nobody else has it right necessarily. And so, how do we deal with that? And so, I just want to read you a quote. Somebody says, "How could there just be one true faith? It's arrogant to say that your religion is superior and try to convert everyone else to it. Surely all religions are equally good and valid for meeting the needs of their followers." So these are questions, as Christians, we got to answer. We have to have answers for these people. But the only problem is, it doesn't always come out. They don't always walk up to you and say, "Can more than one religion be true?" Or, "No, it can't." This comes out in a lot of different ways. You might hear this a lot. People don't say, "Can more than one religion, or only one religion can be true?" But they do say, "Well, I believe that if you do good and treat others well, and do your best to do good deeds, there's going to be a place in heaven for you. You're going to get to heaven eventually if you believe in whatever God you believe in." And well, how would you guys respond to that? Because that is actually more common than somebody just coming up to you and saying, "Hey, more than one religion can be true." They'll say something like this. First of all, it's amazing how many people actually believe something like this. It seems like, it seems all lovey-dovey, those kinds of things. People really believe this, especially in America. This is something they hold on to pretty strongly. So that's one of the first things, how we could respond to this. Well, okay, how do we know what good is? If you say you want to do good, what's good? How do we know what good and bad are? Like we talked about earlier, is it moral? Are morals culturally relative? Can somebody in a different country think that something else is good? How about this? Have any of you guys been bad or done bad things? Okay. Pretty much everybody raised their hand, basically. Well, okay. Well, how much good do you have to do to get to this heaven that you're talking about? Because I know myself, I know who I am, and I know that I'm a terrible person and that I'm a sinner. And Christianity, we have a way to deal with that. But when they talk about this, how do we deal with that? How do you know how much good you have to do before you can get to this so-called heaven? And if this is what they believe, are you only doing good works so that you can get to heaven? Because isn't that ultimately in itself selfish? You're doing it for selfish reasons. I'm not helping you because I think you need help or because I love you. I'm doing it because if I do this good thing, I'm going to get to heaven, and I'm going to get more rewards. Do you know what I'm saying? In Christianity, we love other people. Why? Because Christ first loved us. He gives us the love that we need, and so we can show that to other people regardless of any rewards that we're going to gain. We do it because we know that we are truly loved. All religions are equally valid and basically teach the same thing. Has anybody ever heard this? Has anybody ever said that to you guys? Ravi Zacharias is an awesome guy. He wrote a book called Jesus Among Other Gods, talking about the exclusive claims of Jesus Christ. And he says, all religions are not the same. All religions do not point to God. All religions do not say that all religions are the same. At the heart of every religion is an uncompromising commitment to a particular way of defining who God is or is not, and accordingly of defining what life's purpose is. Anybody who claims that all religions are the same betrays not only an ignorance of all religions, but also a caricatured view of even the best known ones. Every religion is at its core exclusive. And so he would argue, anybody who's even trying to tell you that more than one religion can be right, or that all religions are the same, obviously has no idea what these religions are saying. and has no basis for his claim. Going back to the original question, if there's so many truths out there, how do we know Christianity is the only truth? And the way I wanted to start is by saying, well, we got to know that only one can be true. So that was the starting point for me, is saying, let's boil it down to the fact that only one, you got to believe one thing, or nothing. If you want to be an atheist, say nothing's out there, but you have to come to one defining worldview for yourself. And so the second part of what I'm talking about is why Christianity. I'm going to be moving this summer to Thailand, and I'm going to start telling people why Christianity. Why not Buddhism? Why not Islam? I don't know exactly what you guys are going to run into, but you'll probably run into more people who are agnostic or atheists and say, there is nothing out there, we can't know anything. Or agnostics who say, if you could just prove it to me, I need proof of what, so I can see, if I could just have the proof, then I would believe it. How many people know about, obviously, that Old Testament prophesied Jesus is coming? I came up with a short list of some of the prophecies in the Bible. And I'm not even going to be able to go through all of them, but you can see that in these passages in the Old Testament, they talk about these exact things, and these are things that were written 500 years before Christ, most of them. And they're talking about what's going to happen, what Jesus is going to do. Here's a whole other list. I'm not even going to go through it. But you can see that in the book of Isaiah in chapter 53, they talk about Jesus' life, death, and his basically the whole crucifixion. And that was way before Jesus. How many of you guys know who Plato and Aristotle are? Okay, you all heard of them. How many of you have ever been challenged? Somebody says, Plato didn't exist. You can't say Plato didn't say that. He didn't exist. We don't even have his records. They're all old. Well, we believe Plato and Aristotle existed. The first manuscripts that we have of Plato were 1,200 years after when they were apparently written. And we have 7 copies of what Plato said. Now, Aristotle, we have 49 copies of what he said 14 years after he apparently said it. We have 5,600 copies of early manuscripts of the New Testament. And not only that, but there's about 20,000 more supporting documents that either quote it or talk about it around the same time period from historians like Josephus and other people. And yet people want to come up to you all the time and say, oh, the Bible is so full of mistakes. You guys are wrong. There's more manuscript evidence for the Bible than there is for the vast majority of all the historians and things that we're reading. In terms of how it was kept and recorded, and in the time period in between when it was supposedly written and when the first copies that we have. Even in Islam, with the Quran, well, they believe Muhammad's in his revelations, and so he spoke to his revelations. They weren't even written down until several hundred years after he supposedly died. And then the copies are even later after that. And the same with Buddhism. This guy walked around forever ago and spoke these things, and they were passed down orally until they were eventually written down. Well, we believe that the Bible was inspired by the Holy Spirit from people who were eyewitnesses who were there and wrote these things at this time. They wrote them down. It wasn't 200 years after Jesus died, people said, hey, he said some good things. Maybe we should write down what he said. No, they were writing down right then. You want to talk about Muhammad and Buddha, there's no such thing as a virgin birth there. They didn't live sinless lives for sure, and they wouldn't claim to have lived sinless lives, and neither of them rose from the dead. The person of Jesus Christ is one of a kind in terms of any religion. If nothing else, we should understand that most skeptics and haters of religion have been burned by hypocrites in the church. We should strive to be humble, graceful, loving followers of Christ, good listeners, uncompromising in our faith, without the arrogance, judgmentalism, hate, or violent tendencies that unbelievers see so often in religious people. In the conclusion to apologetics, it doesn't matter. We can sit here and argue with people. We can respond to them with good-sounding arguments, but if we're not living lives like Christians are supposed to be living, if we're not loving them and listening to them, we don't have anything to say if our lives aren't backing up what we say we believe.